Hi, everybody. It's Julie again, and we're continuing with our series called Listen Up, ChurchFinance. And we actually are starting a new series on risk management in our local churches. And so risk management is kind of a fancy way of saying, insurance, but it's way more than just insurance. And so today I'm blessed by having Robert Wise here. Robert is our outside insurance consultant. He's helped the New Jersey network for many years, and also some of you may already know him. He's provided a variety of insurance coverage to our local churches over the years, and he is an expert in all things insurance. So we're going to start off our series by talking about a type of insurance coverage called directors and officers liability. I know that's a mouthful, but
it is. Yes.
And we just sort of refer to it as the D&O policy. So, Rob, if you would just do me a favor and start us off by explaining to what is D&O insurance and how is it different than general liability, and what are some of the applications for D&O?
Yeah, it's a newer coverage that's come out, especially for nonprofits. And what it does is it's protecting your leadership. And a lot of times in talking with boards, say, let's just not talk about liability in general. Let's split it up a little bit because there's all different types. And your general liability is things getting broken, someone getting hurt, ideas of negligence. Directors and officers is more about just allegations of people with grievances against the boss and against leadership, and looking for some type of monetary exchange based on that grievance. And a lot of times it is dealing with actual intentional acts, not negligent acts, but things that the board made a decision, they moved forward, but someone got unhappy with it, or it was deemed to be an unwise decision. And so this is the coverage that comes. It protects the church, and it also protects those individuals sitting on that board or sitting on the finance committee or even sitting on whatever leadership divisions you have for their decisions as they move the ministry forward. So that's the basis.
Okay. So why would a church need to have directors and officers or D&O liability coverage? What are some of the scenarios that you can explain to us that would be covered with this?
D&O was developed to kind of fill a gap, and that gap was the fact that your general liability, again, no one was hurt, nothing got broken. Your professional liability, it wasn't like a counseling issue or anything like that. It wasn't a workers' comp injury. There was this gap in the middle of people, and it was either employment related, a lot of times comes through this coverage. Directors and officers for nonprofits often is meshed with your employer's liability, employer's practice liability coverage. So a lot of it's people-driven decisions. And it was that real errors and omissions coverage for leadership when they're making those decisions. So it kind of, again, grew out of that. So why does a church have to have it? Well, because of this gap, there's claims that occur. And the average claim for a D&O takes about $150,000 to defend.
Wow.
And these types of claims come in. It can be something, as almost silly as the color of the carpet was chosen and someone got upset about that, to maybe something more serious where, some type of employment-related type of situation, or a real estate transaction that went bad. But there was this grievance that came that said, we need to be compensated because you made a decision and I didn't like the outcome.
So that could be somebody actually inside the church who finds out about a decision that the board made, and for whatever reason they don't like the decision, and so they decide to actually sue the board.
Correct.
And sue the church.
Correct.
So without this coverage, the church would then have to go out and hire a lawyer, essentially, to defend, regardless of how ridiculous it is, like the color of the carpeting, but you still would incur those legal fees.
Yeah, the coverage that's provided also comes with the expertise of the company.
Right.
And they're able to get in on these very unique situations and help bring about the defense, and if necessary, the judgment, the settlement that would be required. The the thing that the boards need to kind of remember, as I'm sure everyone sits on boards at times, is your personal assets are at stake when you do it. You're doing it because you want to, you're doing it because you want to help, but there is some liability that's incurred there. And there's a bit of a misconception that, maybe the Volunteer Protection Act of '97 or maybe some type of old charitable immunity law would protect me, but there really is still risk involved. And when those suits come in, they typically don't come in and just name the church. They'll come in and they will name rwise individually as well as every member on the board and the church. So the suit is bringing that individual in. So suddenly that individual may have to go out and hire a lawyer to protect themselves, where this policy would come and do that for them.
Right, so even though I'm a volunteer and I'm doing this because I love my church and because it's a nonprofit, that doesn't protect me.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
it would be nice, and there were some laws in the past that had some much more robust protection, but over time those have really been diluted. And as an individual, there is some protection under the Volunteer Protection Act, but more often than not, when the board decision, I'll go back to the real estate transaction, we decide to sell property, there could be a legitimate breach of contract issue there. And again, that Volunteer Protection Act is not going to respond in that case.
Right. So basically what we're looking at here is a matter of exposing the church to pretty significant, not just legal bills, but if for some reason the person were to sue the church and they would prevail, then I mean literally it could shut the church down. Yeah,
it's a real judgment that comes down, and we have seen it. We did have a church that, I keep using the real estate, that's a common one. They decided to sell a piece of property. Halfway through, they changed their mind. They sold to the next buyer, but the first buyer was a developer, knew very well what to do in the next, and he won. He sued each individual on that board in the church, and he absolutely won.
Wow.
Because of the issues.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, though, the most common type of claim, though, is people related. Right. And because churches are in the people business, the idea of these allegations of perceived violation of rights that come up, that's so common. I mean, that's what we do, and we're trying to help people, and we're, there's going to be those times when there's misunderstanding. So it's a very important coverage.
Right, and there was a time when Christians would not sue each other. Well, I got news for you guys. Those days are gone. Christians really, unfortunately, they do, sue each other, even though there's scriptural admonition not to do that. So this is a reality. So in addition to the general insurance that covers your building if you have water damage or something happens, or if somebody has a slip and fall in your parking lot, this is additional coverage that will kind of fill that gap and protect your individual board members and other leaders in your church, your pastors.
Correct.
And that sort of thing. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Rob, is I'm going to just reveal my ignorance here. I'm not real sure how to read an insurance policy. So what kind of things should I be looking for in my D&O insurance to make sure that I have the proper level of coverage?
It is. They can be daunting documents. They're not the most scintillating at times reading through them. But probably a great idea is to look at the definitions within it. And anytime in insurance policy, if you see a term that's in bold, it has a specific definition. But start at the beginning and look at that insuring agreement. You want to look at the kind of the basics of the beginning of that policy, and that'll reveal a lot. Definitely have someone that can walk you through it.
Right.
Have that broker agent that can kind of point this out, because
don't do this alone.
Until you get your feet wet, then you'd be able to dissect it. But what is different with directors and officers policies is, much like with auto or workers' compensation, those policies are almost verbatim as you go from company to company to company. Directors and officers policies actually are written very specifically company to company, so they can vary dramatically on the coverage that's provided. And so it is important to read through it. I mean, some of the key terms, you want to look for a very broad definition of who's an insured, making sure it's including volunteers, making sure it's not just the top tier board, but other sub-boards that would be, or other committees. So making sure that definition is broad. Another thing you want to look at is a lot of directors and officers is written what's on a claims made form. And with that, that type of policy can extend back in time. So you can basically, if you have what's called full prior acts on your policy, and that would help you defend against a claim that popped up from some incident or some allegation from a long, long time ago coming to today.
Wow.
So that's very important. You want to put the insurance company first. They have the most money. They have more money than the church. They are there to fill the gap. So you want them to pay on behalf of, instead of having wording that would have the church go out, get a lawyer, do all that work, and then get reimbursed on the back end. You want wording that says the company would pay on behalf and be on the front end.
Yeah, that's important.
Another key one is, just real quick, is the duty to defend language, where you want the company has a duty to defend regardless of the type of allegation, if you will. Now, some things, like someone getting hurt, that's going to fall on your general liability policy. But if it's within the realm of a directors and officers policy, it's going to respond and they're going to jump in and help. Again,
Right, so the insurance company will take the lead so that you don't have to worry about going out and hiring your own lawyer.
correct. Yeah, it's that duty to jump in and defend, even if it's an allegation that might be, harebrained or a bit odd. They do have that duty to come in and at least begin to investigate on behalf of the church. So that's important as well.
Yeah, those are important factors. So I just want to really thank you for kind of clarifying this for us. And is there anything else about D&O insurance that you think we need to know at this point?
I would say you hit it at the end is as you begin to go through it, get help to go through it, because the policies do vary quite significantly. But it is a great piece of protection for those members of your congregation that are putting their assets at stake, sitting on that board, and really trying to help the church go forward, as well as the church entity itself. And it can help in the perpetuation of that ministry going forward for a pretty reasonable amount of money.
Right.
So it's a help.
That's great. Thank you so much for your help and for your expertise. We really, this is an area that a lot of us don't really know that much about. So, it's important for us to hear from the experts the things we should be looking out for. So I also want to let you guys know that there's going to be some links to this video where Rob has graciously put some resources, some more detailed information about D&O insurance. And also just want to invite you to stay tuned. There's going to be a few more videos in this series called Risk Management, and we look forward to continuing our conversations with Rob.
You.
Thanks so much for being here, Rob.
All
God
right.
bless.